Welcome to Aspects of Writing with your host, James Kelly. Now, let's get writing. Here's your host, James Kelly.
Hello and welcome to Aspects of Writing. I'm your host, James Kelly. On the show with us today, we have Joe Cortese. Cortese?
Cortese is fine.
Okay. Joe Cortese.
We're not in Italy.
I was trying to do the Sicilian
we
thing.
won't do the Sicilian version. Cortese.
Cortese.
Cortese
And we
is
have
fine.
Cynthia De Boer.
De Boer, which is Dutch.
Cynthia's right. We're going to be talking about the difference between traditional publishing and self-publishing. And Joe, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background and what led up to this today.
Basically, I was a high school English teacher for over 24 years, and then I went into administration, which was probably a big mistake in a way, because a lot of times when I was in the office of it as an administrator, I wished I was back in the classroom. But anyway, I've had so many experiences in education. I've tutored and taught grades kindergarten all the way up to beyond high school into university and college level. I've taught GED classes for adults so they could go back to school and get their diplomas. And one of the crowning achievements was handing an 82-year-old grandmother her high school diploma.
That's so cool.
That was really a neat experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
But through my educational experiences, I've learned that you have to be very positive, you have to be assertive, but don't accent negative behavior because everybody has a lot of good in them.
That's true.
And sometimes you need to address the behavior and not the individuals as a person.
Right.
Talk about the behavior problem.
Yeah.
And, of course, that led into my two books.
Okay.
One is called Phoenixivity. The other one's The Missing Link in American Public Education.
Tell us a little bit about the first book.
The first book, Phoenixivity, is a self-help kind of book. It details the progress I made in becoming a more positive individual, more optimistic instead of being negative and down on myself and depressed, having acute anxiety, dealing with a divorce, a very high-pressure job, and losing my family and being bankrupt all at one time.
This is a traditionally published book.
Yes. Basically, I learned that you're better off self-publishing, and we'll get into that in just a minute.
Yeah,
okay.
I just want to make sure that everyone understands you have two different type books.
The second book was self-published, and I feel a lot better about it because I had more control on its content and on editing.
So what is that book about?
The second book is how the demise of the American family has affected education.
Okay.
And through conferences over the years with parents or lack of parents, and through conferences on discipline with families, I've noticed that the missing link is fathers more than anything else. So I researched it, and I prove in my book, using all the evidence I could find, that if families had an intact father and motherhood, kids would be so much better off. They need the role models of both sexes, not just one. And indeed, it's a very difficult task for a single parent to raise a child alone. I admire them because it's almost impossible to do the best job you possibly can do because you're torn in so many different ways.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, so that's a little bit about you. Cynthia, give us a little bit about who you are and your background.
Okay, well, I'm an author, speaker, and disability advocate, and I'm an executive producer here at Quirky Minds Media with my very own podcast with my beautiful co-host, Temple Kenyon.
And the name of that podcast is?
That is A Million and One Things. And we talk about pretty much anything and everything. We try to stay on a very positive note. We stay away from the really volatile issues that are out there because there's enough people talking about them, and we really want to just enjoy it and entertain, and that's really the reason for it. As far as my books, I do self-help, Me, Myself, and I, which is about the realities of living with a prosthetic eye, freedom from depression, no matter what your disability may be. And then the third one is Freeing Space in Your Home Office and Mind, where I help people understand why they get stuck, why they can't get rid of things. And then as a genre hopper, I wrote Jimmy's Magic Turtle, which is a very adorable little book about obviously a magic turtle, and it was written to honor my nephew. And I really love being here and being a part of everything that we do here.
Yeah, well, thank you. So we're going to be talking about traditional publishing versus self-publishing, and everyone's experience is completely different. I mean, truly, from author to author, we hear so many different variations on this. I started self-publishing, just so you know, in 1995, and it was a different way of publishing back then. We didn't have digital printing. You didn't do print on demand. You had to do 2,000 to 5,000 copies at a time. to get a good price reduction to get it into the stores. It was up to you to get it in the stores. It's changed. It's up to you.
Right.
So we're going to go in and talk about those differences and why traditional publishing could be good, but more than likely you're better off self-publishing. When you went to get a publisher, how did you go about doing that?
It was almost by accident.
Okay.
I went to a conference, and at the conference, I met someone who had just lost her husband, and as a widow, she took over a publishing company, and she promised me that if I would finish this 3-day seminar there, that she was also attending, that she would publish my book.
Okay.
The name of the company was Bush Publishing, and cousins of the actual Bush family that we know of in American politics. And I thought, well, okay, I finished the seminar, so she said, well, start sending me your documents. So through email, I sent her chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, so forth and so on. And she would send it back to me and say, well, I suggest maybe you should do this, do that. And of course, I made all the corrections and took in all her suggestions. And sometimes I argued a point, and I said, I'm not changing this because...
Good for you.
And one of the chapters I had to remove dealt with same-sex marriages.
Okay.
And I was surprised that she wanted me to remove that chapter. And I said, okay, why? Well, my husband was a pastor of a Christian church, the largest one in Oklahoma, and he passed, and I don't think he would rest well with this. I abided with her wish, and I deleted the chapter.
That's too bad.
Yes, because today it would be a very timely topic, okay? Because I quoted the Bible and a lot of research on it and looked at it throughout history, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought it was a good thing because my book dealt with positivity and looking at things in a positive light rather than a negative light.
Right.
So anyway, I lost that argument. And when the book was finally finished and ready to be published, she assured me that all the corrections would be taken in and everything would be fine.
Right. Properly edited.
Yes. So she sent the final edited version to me before it was published.
All right.
It looked good. Everything looked great. So about 2 months later, I get my books, and the title of my book is misspelled.
Oh, no.
2 of the letters are transposed. Phoenix, Phoenix. It's EO. On the cover, on the spine of the book, on the top of every page. Phoenixivity was misspelled.
Wow.
Then I started reading the text. I found over 100 spelling errors within the text. Now, I'm not saying I'm Mr. Perfect. My major is English. I don't pretend to know the English language 100% because it's changing as we speak.
Right.
But I keep on top of it as far as grammar and spelling and everything like that. And I checked that all my I's were dotted, my T's are crossed, et cetera, et cetera. And I felt terribly depressed and upset.
So what did you do?
Besides cursing on the telephone when I talked to the publisher, I won't relay that conversation, but I was very adamant that these mistakes were hers and not mine. Little did I know, she probably sent my copy, which was finished, to someone else to proofread in another country.
Right.
And because of that, the English spelling was off, the grammar and punctuation was off. They even transposed the letters in Phoenixivity, and she would not admit that to me, although I pressed her on it. Who did your proofreading?
But wouldn't you have your original documents that you sent her?
Yes, but she said, well, I don't know what happened. Well, obviously something happened in transition because here's my document and you have a copy of it and it didn't have any of these errors on, much less the cover.
Right. Well, the cover, that's important.
It was an insult to me.
Yeah.
So to make a long story short, I pressured her, and finally she had to bite the bullet, make the proper corrections, and republish it with the second edition at her cost.
When did the book come out?
That came out in 2010.
Okay. Well, in 2010, it was still digital at that time.
Exactly.
So it would not have been a big deal because she should not have published a number of books, did she?
Yes, she did.
How many?
Several hundred.
Well, that's a mistake on her part. First of all, proof should have been sent to you before anything was published.
Correct. That never happened.
And I'm glad you're sharing this because this is a common problem. And Cynthia has a story similar to this when it comes to ordering a number of books at one time. Cynthia, can you share that part?
Right. Well, I went to a vanity press type of place, and I had everything done. The editing was done. I even received the copy of the edit, and it was golden. I mean, there was nothing wrong with it. And then it went to layout. Well, in layout, they're not supposed to mess with any of your grammar. All they're supposed to be doing is setting your pages. That's it.
Right.
Well, I didn't think anything about it. I get a copy of the layout before it was supposed to be printed, and the word "it's" can mean its head or it is. And they had changed that. It was so wrong. And I went through everything, and I thought it was fine, and it ended up going to publication information anyway. And unbeknownst to me, when I got it back, one of the celebrities that I talked about in the book, Peter Falk, his name was spelled wrong, and it sent me reeling. Now, I understand that there's going to be a mistake here and there.
Sure.
Everybody does that. That's no big deal. But they did that, and then I was told that I had to order 2,500 books before Barnes & Noble would even look at it. I didn't know. I mean, I'm a newbie at this.
So
Who
you
knows?
did order the books.
So I did order the books. On top of that, they didn't bother to tell me that I would be charged a penny and a half per book per month for storage. And if I wanted the books and didn't want to pay that amount, I got the honor of paying for shipping at $37 for 108 books.
Oh, my God.
2,500 books, guys.
Yeah.
That's a lot of books.
I'm just curious, what options did you take?
Well, they did ship me all the books, and that was my baby. And I still have a closet full of them because what I talk about is a hard subject. It's about the loss of a prosthetic eye. I mean, that's not, your feel-good book that you're going to go out and sell 1,000 copies in one day.
I hear you.
And they are going away, obviously, but they all have that darn mistake in them, which really ticks me off.
I think that's probably the number one thing. But this happens whether we self-publish or whether we go through a traditional. I have a book on the shelf that was through a traditional publisher. On the first page, there was an error. And it's a beautiful book. Looks beautiful outside, inside, photographs, but there's an error.
See.
For someone who's very picky, that's going to be a big deal. If you're one of those who thought, well, it's just an error and goes. But mainly that's the authors because we know that happens. But a reader's not going to do that.
Well, it's our baby.
So, yeah, it is our
Yeah,
baby.
it is. And, apart from the typos and any kind of grammatical miscorrections, whatever you want to call them, another mistake you can make, and I made, was with a traditional publisher, if you don't have a really good bona fide contract, they can make promises and not keep them. For example, I was told there would be book signings, and the publisher would be present and set them up for me. I was told that she would help promote my book, and she would get it into Barnes & Noble for me, and she would do all the legwork to get it on Amazon and help me sell the book. None of that was ever delivered.
Yeah, I actually know someone else who recently is fighting to get her contract back. You got to be very careful. And what she did is that she signed a 3-year contract, so she can't actually get the book back. The good thing is they did not copyright it in their name, so that's one plus.
Yeah.
But she still can't go out there and sell this book and recreate it and put a new ISBN on it and stuff until she gets it back in August.
And see, I can do that.
Yeah, well,
which is good.
I think, first of all, there's a misnomer between traditional publishing, Vantage Press. Basically, it sounds like you did Vantage Press, even though they say they're a traditional publisher.
Right.
And we have authors all the time, and Cynthia, you know them as well.
Definitely.
It's kind of a bragging right to say you were published by a traditional publisher.
Right.
But the reality of it is that usually it's more of a vanity press than a traditional publisher. You've got the big five, and anything below that, you've got to be careful with because they can lock you into long contracts. They're not going to do the work they told you, like they said. I mean, even the big five, it's up to the author to go out there and do a lot of the book signings and carry some of the weight themselves. So you certainly would have to understand that's the way it's going to be with anyone who calls himself a traditional publisher. And the Vantage Press, there's not a whole lot of difference between a Vantage Press and a traditional publisher unless they're really doing what they said, which is really securing those book signings for you, making sure that they're representing you to everyone.
Almost as an agent.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if they're not doing that, then they really shouldn't even be calling themselves that.
Right.
I have actually published for people in the past. I can tell you now that as someone who has tried to do the traditional publishing route, it is a difficult thing because everyone's personality is different. And I've found that everyone has their own idea of what they want to do, and they never listen to you. They go out there and they do what they want to do. So that's why I kind of scaled back from that a little bit, because I actually had someone who was doing quite well, and we did have her in Barnes & Noble, and we had a 3-month-long streak of just selling like crazy every weekend at book signings.
Right.
And they decided to take time off right in the height of that.
Wow.
So it's a two-way street.
Yeah, true.
And it sounds like that yours is a little different in that they did not provide what they said they were going to do.
They never delivered.
And there's nothing you can do, to be honest.
No.
I mean, what are you going to do?
Absolutely
Did
nothing.
you have a long contract with that?
No, it was not really a contract at all. It was just verbal. I met her at a conference. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even with a regular contract, because these guys that I went with, they told me they were going to do so much for social media and all of this. And again, newbie here didn't really understand. And what they presented was this amazing package. And it turned out to be, oh, well, we're going to do a little blast for you. And because they want you to be, on the top of like Amazon, you need to get 100 people to click in and buy your book the first day. What do you mean I need to? I thought that's what I was paying you guys for.
Right.
I don't know 100 people. I mean, quite frankly, at that point.
Yeah, and when I got demanding, I almost threatened to go to Oklahoma, right to their facility, and make a scene. And of course, she said, oh, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. Well, what are you going to do? And thus the second
Where are they
edition.
from in Oklahoma?
Well, they no longer exist.
Okay, but we're in Oklahoma.
Oklahoma City.
Oh, because I'm from Oklahoma.
Okay. The thing about self-publishing that I really enjoyed was I was able to shop around and look at different companies that print your book but allow you to be the publisher.
Yeah.
It's a big difference.
Yes.
Okay. So there are companies that are reliable, and I found one because I was looking through the backs of magazines and all kinds of ads, and I basically boiled it down to 3 companies I thought were really reputable that could print my book and would give me the kind of service that I didn't have with my first book. And when I looked at prices, and I thought, this is coming out of my pocket, and what am I getting more bang for the buck with, this one or this one? I boiled it down to just one company, and they were very good in communication, which I saw as a big plus.
Yes.
Definitely.
Emails almost all the time, okay, keeping on top of communication. Nothing was left unattended or unanswered. So that's one of the lessons I learned about self-publishing.
Well, I've been publishing since 1995, and the industry's changed dramatically
Oh, yes.
since then because we've gone into the digital age. It's so much easier to order a number of books, like we said, to get the price down. But
Right.
now you can order one book if you want.
True.
And you don't even have to carry them. As long as you're selling them online, they just order them and it's printed and sent to the buyer.
True.
But I will say this, though, that Cynthia, I know the processes you went through with getting published the first time, the second time, the third time, and the last time. And the last time, you did it all yourself.
Well, actually, after the first book, I did the rest of
you
them
did.
by myself. And I did hire somebody to help me with the cover, and I did hire an editor, and anybody that thinks that they're perfect, you definitely need an editor. I did learn along the way, though, and I had not done this with any of my books. I needed to have, not just because my books are more female orientated, but I needed to have a male and a female point of view. And having these beta readers to look through everything, I think, is really important. It was a learning experience. You get frustrated at times because, like I said, I didn't know any of this stuff. So now I'm trying to figure out, well, who do I go to for this and who do I go
Right.
to for that? And I knew I was doing a series, and I didn't want all my covers to be the same,
Right.
but I did want some of the aspects to carry through. Hands are very important to me, and they're on my book covers for anything that's dealing with depression. And of course, they're used differently, but that's the thing. Learning this, and I will say that the company that I originally went through for my first book, karma kind of got them too, because they are no longer in business. And I don't wish anybody ill will, because obviously they employed a lot of people, and you don't want to ever see anybody out of work.
Surely.
But at the same time, be honorable.
Right.
And I think where we all get in trouble is that we're so passionate about what we're doing that we believe the other person that's helping us along this journey is going to be, and they're not.
Right.
Well, and that's what the show is about. We're here to help
Exactly.
the up-and-coming author, to let them know, don't go through the hardships we went through. I shared in the past, I spent $30,000 to get my first book published.
Oh, my.
Because I didn't know the ins and outs of the business. It was a different process back then. I mean, you had to print so many to get a price reduction. And they did the big plates back then. So there was a little more to it. So I can see why I spent a little more. But today, there's no reason to spend hardly anything. My two concerns when it comes to publishing, whether you're someone calling themselves a traditional publisher or you're self-publishing, is the editing and
Definitely.
the cover.
Yes.
Those two are very important. If you
Yes.
have that, and as long as the content is done well, and if you have an editor, it should be, then you're okay, because you really can't tell the difference anymore between a lot of the self-published books and traditionally published books. I actually, on my first book cover, and I'm not happy with my first book cover, had a graphic artist do the work for me. I honestly feel that I've done better on my own when it comes to doing my covers. But it's a comfort zone you have to have.
Right.
You know, you have to know and believe in yourself. If not, go hire someone.
Well, on my second book, The Missing Link, it's kind of interesting because I had an idea what I wanted the cover to look like, but I'm not an artist. I can draw stick figures, you know.
Well.
But I thought I don't really want to take a canned suggestion from the internet.
Right.
I want to get something original, and it fits the theme of my book. So I thought about this and thought about it, and I thought, you know, you have an artist friend back east who used to live in Las Vegas, knows you very well. Why don't you ask her to design the cover for you?
Yeah, there you go.
So I did, and sent her some of my suggestions, and she came out with a great cover. And she said, when you were in San Diego, she said, are you aware that I designed a lot of the artwork that hangs up in a lot of the casinos, Indian casinos in California? I said, no. She said, well, let's show you some. And she showed me some of her artwork, and I thought, oh my God, it's a small world.
Definitely.
So a lot of times you have to look into your acquaintances, look through your list of friends and your social media and say, do I know an artist? Could this person really feel the passion I feel for my theme? And she did. So I'm very grateful for that.
Did you pay her for it, or did she just do it as a friend?
She did it gratis, but I offered her some money.
Yeah.
Because I loved it. I was very grateful.
I think some people think they have to spend money in order to get something done, and I know people who do that for everything. If they don't spend $3,000, then they haven't accomplished anything. And then I hear them complaining a year later. I have someone who did a book cover. It cost him $1,700.
Oh.
Wow.
It was a painting. He wanted this painting done a certain way. I mean, it is a beautiful cover, I will say that. And he does have the painting, so I suppose maybe it's okay. But you don't need to spend that kind of money.
No.
Not today. And there's a lot of sites out there like Fiverr.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fiverr.com.
There's a lot of places you can go to somebody to help you do your work. I would be careful or cautious with that editing through some of those services, although I have used them as well. It's better if you can find someone on a local level to help you, because there's a hands-on type thing there where you can communicate. And like you said, your difficulty was no one communicated with you. Someone went and did something.
Right.
And then uploaded a wrong file.
Yeah.
That's why you really need to know who's doing what. And if you self-publish, you are in control. Now it's on you.
Yeah.
And so then there's no one to blame if it's not right. But the great thing is that you are in control and can make sure that it's done correctly.
The first edition of Phoenixivity, the one that was misspelled, that cover, it's very interesting how I got it. I went online and I looked at all the images of phoenixes that have ever been drawn, or other books that had a similar theme or used the phoenix symbol, and I looked at them, and there were hundreds and hundreds of them. And I got to one of the last ones, and there was this image drawn by an artist in the 1700s.
Okay.
And I was able to link up to the original copy of it via the internet.
Yeah.
It's in a library in Munich, Germany.
Okay.
And I looked at the copyright on it. It had expired.
Great.
So I was able to
use
publish it, and I became the possessor, the owner of that piece of artwork
Oh, that's cool.
on the cover of my book.
Yeah.
So when I republish another edition, Phoenixivity, eventually, I'm going to go back to that original cover. Since I own it now, I'm the
Right.
copyright person.
Yeah.
And I want to give tribute, and I do in this second edition, because the Phoenix on the cover of my second edition is actually computer generated. It took the original and it put it into the 2020s. Like, what would it look like if this guy drew this today? And that's what the computer generated.
Okay.
So that much about the second edition I really loved, that you have a current rendition of the original artwork. But I like to go back to the original again and publish that. But I give tribute to the author in the closing pages of my book, or the artist, I should say.
Well, I don't usually do this much, but actually I wrote a book called A Simple Guide to Writing and Publishing, and that's available on 1millionbooksin100days.com. And I'd also like to share that we do a campaign for 1millionbooksin100days.com. That's the number 1 million books in the number 100days.com. 1millionbooksin100days.com. And Joe, you just signed up for that program as well.
Yes, I
Cynthia's on there as well with her books.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
that's a new campaign. I want to make sure everyone is aware of that. That's for self-published authors. Self-published doesn't mean just someone who did it themselves. Like you said, you had help. You went out there and some. So we accept anyone who's basically gone down that road or that route. And it's all handheld books. It's all paper. There's no ebooks. I do want to share this, though, that Draft to Digital is a format, if you're not familiar with it, Joe, to go out there and get your ebook on. It's by far better than Kindle or Barnes & Noble in the sense that they give you 90% royalty. If they put your book on Amazon, which they can, if you don't go to Kindle first and do it, or Barnes & Noble, they will put it on there for you. And then they get an extra 5%. So you still get 85% royalty.
Wow.
So I always recommend that before you go out there and you do an ebook version, go to Draft to Digital first. And this was started by authors, and it's all hands-on. They've got real phone numbers where you can call and talk to a real person if you have a problem. So I highly recommend that.
I love
Great.
it. That's
Yeah.
where I went through, and the mistake that I talked about in my first book, they actually helped me correct that, and they put it out there. And then the really great thing is there's no upfront cost. I mean,
Right, no cost.
no cost at all. I mean, you'll get your royalty, and it's much more than you can get at a lot of other distributors.
That's great.
And I have had to call several times because it's a new thing, and it was great. They were right there. They help you out. They don't put you down. Sometimes, especially if you call on something that's like computer related, they talk to you like you're an idiot.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it really gets frustrating. And these guys, they've been there. They're doing it themselves. And it's really a great company. And 1 million books in 100 days is James's project. And we are in the third campaign. And I've been involved in all three. And it is dynamite. And one thing he didn't mention is that $1 from every book does go to charity.
Yes.
And I love that about it. Also, we do get a little bit more royalty than we would from other distributors. And it's a smaller platform. He covers so many genres. Listen, if you can't find a book there, you just don't want to read. I'm sorry, but
Right.
there's
Well,
something there for
we do
everyone.
limit the number of authors each campaign.
Right.
'Cause the idea is to give some recognition to the authors we have there and give them a fan base. And then hopefully they'll come back each campaign and discover new authors. We always add authors.
Right.
We just added to this campaign. So that's the whole premise of this, is to escalate the self-published author and give them a venue, because there's 1 million books published a year. So the competition is fierce.
Yes.
So, and that's the real reason we started that program. We're running out of time.
Okay.
So Cynthia, real quick, where can we get your books?
Okay, at 1millionbooksin100days.com is perfect for that. And if you want to check out Temple and Mice podcast, it's amillionthings.com.
Right.
Ditto.
And Joe, so
The
you're saying
same.
go 1 million books in 100 days. I want people to understand, too, that you do have the ebook versions that are out there as well on the other outlets. So people can look for your books out there on the ebook
Right.
versions. And where's a website they can go to learn more about you, Joe?
My latest website would be The Missing Link in American Public Education. It's
Okay.
the title.
The whole title. Okay.
And it'll take them to my author's page. And if they have trouble getting to that link, they can just email me and I'll help them
What's
get the
your
book.
email?
drjoe679@hotmail.com.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah.
The
very easy.
website, though, is that a .com? I didn't catch it.
Yes, at .com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And this is your host, James Kelly, reminding you, if you can dream it, you can write it. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to Aspects of Writing. We hope you will join us next week as we discuss every aspect of the writing industry. Until then, if you can dream it, you can write it.